All right. This is the public postmortem for a Berkshelf supermarket API outage we had, well, intermittent outage we had back on the 2nd. Couple of just kind of housekeeping things. We're going to do this in a public fashion because the supermarket belongs to the community. We at Chef feel it's super important that we include the community in the running of the supermarket and give them the opportunity to be part of that process. So we're going to actually go through, for those that are viewing after the fact, we're going to go through a standard postmortem just like we would here at Chef, and walk through our normal processes, but in a public fashion. So, all right, I'm going to start by sharing the. I went ahead and dropped the postmortem doc into. Gosh, it's got a name. Into an ePad. I'm going to go ahead and share that right now. I think I'm sharing it. Yeah, I'm sharing the right window.
You might want to up the font on that for.
Oh yeah, for sure. I was about to say, can you see it? Cool. Mark and Rob, can you guys go ahead and if you turn on the chat window, you can name yourselves, and if you make edits, I can actually see who it is. All right, so as you all do that, we're going to start with, we start every postmortem with the following. This is a blameless postmortem. We will not focus on the past events as they pertain to could have, should have, would have, etc. All follow-up action items will be assigned to a team or individual before the end of the meeting. If the item is not going to be top priority leaving the meeting, don't make it a follow-up item. And really, I feel like we should also be adding the line to these. We're assuming that people are doing the right thing when they did the thing that caused the pain. So yeah, that's important to keep in mind. All right, let's kind of work through this. I was the incident lead. Essentially what happened is we started seeing builds fail in delivery.chef.co, which is our internal delivery cluster. In addition, we saw some reports from the community that there were issues with Berkshelf. After a little bit of investigating, it became really clear that it was Berkshelf and not delivery. So we're going to go ahead and walk through the timeline of what happened. There are things in here that we now know 50-50. I'm sorry, with 20/20 hindsight. So you may find as you're reading through it going, oh, if they had known that, why didn't they do something? Well, it's because, well, we didn't actually know. We were able to find out after the fact. So, all right, and also worth noting that these all times are UTC. Oh, wow, that bounced a bit more than I was expecting. Okay, so at 0540 on the second, because I can't type, we saw our first node runs out of disk. At 9:32, we see our first ticket opened, and at 10:50 we see our second ticket open. When I say ticket open, these are tickets created with the Chef support team. At 14:05, I declare an incident. Oliver joins, and Mark Harrison joined the incident channel. So for those that don't know, we use Slack internally, and we have a central incident room where we coordinate these activities. It becomes super useful because when you come to build these kinds of documents, you can just go back and reference the history. So continuing on. At 2:09, and Mark begins tracking down instances serving supermarket, so tracking down, I guess the word that would be useful. I notify support, the support on call via Slack that the support page needs updating. And then we started a video chat session to have a higher bandwidth conversation. I need to go look at the timeline because I apparently messed something up there. My guess is line 31 is wrong, so Mark begins to work towards a per node repo of the issue, because at this point we were pretty convinced it was not a cluster-wide thing. It was intermittent enough that it was probably isolated to one of a few nodes. At 2:21, Rob Kidd joins, who's on the supermarket team. At 2:23, Josh Glass, who is the support on-call, confirms that the status page has been updated. At 2:27, Mark notes that the current theory is that the connection is being closed while data is being transferred. At 2:27, Mark also noted that we are still unsure which nodes are serving the backend. So we were trying to track down what set of servers were actually in rotation at the time. I was able, at 2:29, I dug out some documentation and pointed Mark at it. And then at 2:30, I basically posted the output of what we were doing to reproduce the issue. So what you're seeing here is just a while loop that will not exit, grabbing the output from the universe and letting us know if JQ, which is a JSON parser, exited cleanly. At 14:32, Rob Kidd begins looking for recent changes in the codebase. At 2:33, Adam left. He addressed some customers in another communication channel that we use, that this is a known issue when we were working on things. At 14:38, Josh Glass posts links to relevant tickets. At 14:46, Rob Kidd attempted to contact Neil Shamrell, who's really kind of the primary person on Supermarket.
Would this be an appropriate time to add an event or something that we knew?
Sure. You want to add that? You want to just?
Sure, I can add it in there. I'll say it. Somewhere between my looking at recent changes and contacting Nell, we had determined there weren't any recent changes that would have affected this, and we had confirmed that Supermarket does not chunk and stream the universe.
Okay.
I'll add that as an estimate between those two times.
Sounds good.
It was in the Zoom, so we didn't have it logged in the chat channel.
Yeah, it's always interesting. The danger of the high bandwidth is that things get lost in the timeline.
Yeah.
When you're going through reproducing.
Yep. Lesson learned is if you say it, type it too.
Exactly. Give me just a moment here. Okay. Just making a note off to the side of something I need to address. Okay, continuing down. Mark, at 14:57, I requested that the status be updated to indicate that we were still investigating the problem. At 14:58, Mark pasted in basically the last 100 lines of Nginx error logs from all of the nodes to give us a kind of a starting point to look at things. At this point, this cluster doesn't have centralized logging. At 14:58, Stephen Locke let us note that customers were reporting issues through a different channel. I actually think that's a duplicate of Adam Left's update, but nonetheless, it happened at about that time. At 1500, status was updated on the site, and a few seconds later, Mark started a rolling restart of Supermarket across the cluster. At 1501, Adam Left confirms that all known issues are with the API and not the web interface. At 1501, Mark finds that the third node fails to restart, and a few minutes later discovers that the disk is full. At 1506, Mark removes an unrotated log and confirms that supermarket restarts successfully. At 1508, more nodes are found to have full or nearly full disks. A full loop of the cluster to remove the log file and restart is initiated. At 1512, I confirmed that we are working correctly and declare the incident resolved. And then at a few seconds later, requested that the status page be updated. And then about 2 or 3 minutes later, it was the update was confirmed. Is everybody good with the timeline as it stands?
Yep, that's how I remember it.
Okay, cool. Sorry, like I'm sure there is nodding going on that I can't see. Alrighty, so we'll jump into the contributing factors. The full disks cause the API to not generate valid responses. And Mark, I question, like, there's the. Do we want to list kind of the actual problems here? Because like the full disk really wasn't the problem, right? It's the fact that the log wasn't being rotated and the disks are fairly small in size. Do we want to note those here, or do we just want to discuss those later on as in remediation items?
I mean, the contributing factor was mainly the disks were full. I mean, yes, we don't have we didn't have log rotation, and we didn't have adequate monitoring to alert us. And we also assumed that we did have adequate monitoring because we started looking at other causes to begin with.
I mean, they will be parallel lists if we list them in both places.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I take that. So certainly a contributing factor to the mean time to detect is that we had inadequate monitoring of.
Yeah. And I think in general that's our goal, right? Is like what kept us from detecting the problem, and inadequate monitoring is probably worth noting as a contributing factor, right?
Yep.
Like if someone had been paged when the first disk got even close to being full, it would have been dealt with then, and we wouldn't have had an outage, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk stabilization steps. We removed the unrotated log file and restarted the service on each node. Does anyone disagree with that?
That was the stabilization. Well, other steps were attempted, but that was the one that actually stabilized.
Okay, I think that's a safe thing to assume.
Yep.
You know what I'm going to do for our viewers? I'm going to force my video to be the one that's active. I've forgotten about that on. It's so weird. I don't use Hangouts very often anymore. All right, so jumping into impact. Users of Berkshelf were intermittently unable to resolve dependencies. So if you are doing development locally on your workstation, it would have prevented that. My guess is there were also problems caused for folks running this in CI. And what is it called? Amazon's chef thing. It will come to me. But
OpsWorks?
OpsWorks, yes. Users of OpsWorks would have been unable to deploy infrastructure intermittently. Additionally, anybody attempting to upload/share a cookbook might have hit this problem as well. I think I want to actually list out the additional points of impact because it helps to better give us a feel for why this matters.
Sure. The scope of the audiences.
And it's really interesting when we deal with some of these things that it's not just like in our own businesses, right? That you run into those things that you don't actually know who you're hurting, except from you've had conversations externally to be able to kind of put that together.
Sorry, there was more silent nodding. Yes.
I swear I put spaces in there. I don't know where they went.
It's the maxim that the number of eyeballs while watching typing will reduce the skill at typing.
That makes complete sense to me. Okay, so I did some time math. So no guarantees it's correct, but we'll go with it. Our total impact time based on when the first box ran out of disk is 9 hours and 35 minutes. Our time to detect, so the time it took before someone at Chef declared an incident and said we need to fix this, was 8 hours and 25 minutes. And it took us about 1 hour and 10 minutes to actually resolve the issue. So, and our corrective actions don't say this, but one of the things I like to think about when we talk about corrective actions is that our goal is anything that goes in corrective actions should decrease the time to detect and the time to resolve.
Makes sense.
Can't type and talk at the same time. So I think the first corrective action here is we need to correct the omnibus installer so that it has built-in log rotation.
I concur, and I will take that.
It is interesting as I'm putting some of these down, that thought process of the one thing that we don't spend a lot of time doing is figuring out like why we're in the shape that we're in. Like, for example, like there's a lot of background for those that don't know as to why we don't have log rotation, and it was overlooked because of like this long chain, and you understand it, but it's interesting how it lacks relevance in the postmortem discussion, because it really, a lot of those discussions just boil down to placing blame.
Is there, so maybe not in this venue, but is that going to be trickier than just adding log rotate to the?
No, it's just historical reasons around like the fact that the omnibus cluster is actually fairly new, and all of the things around that. Deploying a new service. Because as much as Supermarket has been running for over a year now, using it with the omnibus installer is a relatively recent development.
Ah, I see. Is there throwing this out there, and we could say no, is there a different partitioning scheme we can put on these nodes that would prevent like the logging partition, var log filling up, from affecting services?
I think would be something that would go outside of corrective actions, because that's a larger question about how you run your infrastructure.
Fair enough.
I'm generally of the opinion hey, here comes Dell. I'm generally of the opinion that that's like, yeah, you get into some that causes more pain.
That would certainly be big. I agree.
So, but I don't see the value in doing that as a corrective action. It is something you might want to think about as part of the Supermarket team on something to work on. So we need to do. Someone should have been notified that there was that the disks were full, and probably the same as, I would guess that as you're in there, you will find that memory is the same case. But so the disk being full, who wants to take adding an alert? Because you have the data, right? I went into Datadog and was able to pull when the disks ran out. So it's not like we need to add any metrics. We just need to kick it to PagerDuty to let someone know that, hey, this is bad. So, Rob, you want to take that on as well?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
I'm happy to help if you need it.
Awesome. Because
I will just assign it to the Supermarket team.
For the Supermarket team, yeah.
Yay!
New guy gets everything.
It would be nice to have some monitoring as well around the symptoms people were experiencing.
Yeah,
I don't know how we can do that. Like, did we actually get 500s in the logs, or was it just truncated responses?
I don't think we wouldn't get 500s in the log because the log was on the partition that was full.
Okay. So I guess
if
logging for that, but
like throwing an idea out there, if we had something that would simulate the customer experience of downloading the universe and checking for a 200, and ability to parse JSON would be a real simple like end user test. Can I hit this endpoint and receive parsable JSON? Basically, a operationalized version of the script that's included in the timeline, running somewhere not on the cluster, and have that report success or failure might help as just a really dirty, but I don't want to say dirty, very simple way of confirming that customers are receiving what they expect when they download the universe. That sounds kind of big, though. As a new person, I don't know where I would run that and hook it into our monitoring infrastructure that exists already.
We could potentially do it through CloudWatch since we are running on AWS.
Okay.
So we'll add I'm going to just add a check for parsing JSON on /universe.
Yeah.
So I guess trying to document some of these things that are kind of bigger discussions. And like, would everybody agree that centralized logging is probably a useful discussion? It's just beyond the scope of corrective actions.
Yes.
Yes.
That's something that Nell and I had talked about, shipping logs off the nodes.
Yep, I've got a long list of things to add to the supermarket infrastructure, and that is definitely needs to be one of them.
Although I imagine that's a conversation that we need to interface with ops and
absolutely.
Figure out if there's a sort of central logging solution we could use, or
yeah, and a lot of that infrastructure is being discussed internally right now.
Cool.
So I guess the other thing that kind of comes to mind for me as putting on I used to work on the supermarket hat, is why Sentry did not fire. Because in concept, we should have gotten, when the partial JSON was fed, we should have gotten an exception, right?
I did get an exception from Sentry. I've not been able to add Rob to Sentry. There's something wrong, or there's something weird about their UI.
Okay, so let's add you and I as a fix Sentry notifications, because my team is actually dropping them into our Slack channel, which for something like this might be super useful. So let's add that as a
I'd say probably related to all of this, any of those corrective actions that involve alerting rather than like in-flight mitigation, like log rotate. If it's an alerting, how do we get those alerts to people who are on call? And as a new guy, I don't know like the on-call routing scheme. I know that when this had happened, like I was sleeping for those 9 hours. So if Nell and I are the only ones getting those alerts, it would have continued. It would have still been 9 hours to detect.
So I think it's a larger discussion than just a corrective action, but the community engineering team and operations need to kind of figure out exactly how that works.
Agreed.
With where that is a thing.
That would be alerting and on-call, I guess, right?
Okay. You know, there was one other larger thought, and I know it's something that I've been thinking a lot about for my team. One of the things that hurt us significantly was we were not able to isolate to a particular instance. We weren't able to say, this one is broke. Let's go look at it. And we were running cluster-wide commands, which doesn't always give you the feel, right? Whereas if you jump on a box that has full disk, there's a tendency to see things because of the way commands behave that you wouldn't have seen otherwise. So I think better bubbling up knowledge of what instance you're hitting and documenting how to inspect a single instance becomes super useful.
All right. I mean, I think that is a larger thought rather than an immediate corrective action, but that could be something that we could include in like the response headers.
Yeah, that's I think that's what my team is going to standardize on. And to be honest, is as I was looking at it, most of our applications are Ruby, so I'm thinking, like we either run Ruby or we run Nginx. Like it's one or both,
right. So
one if not both.
Two opportunities to inject some information into headers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The other thing we were talking about is injecting the version of the software that's running on that node. So like you can go grab the headers from all of the boxes and go, hey, this one has got a different version really, really fast.
Yeah, I like that. It's like easy way to determine the provenance of information you got from some sort of API call. Like who gave me this response, so that I can go hunt them down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Looking through, are there any immediate corrective actions that we need to take to make this happen? The other thing, and I'm going to ask kind of a larger question because it's a little different because of the nature of this product. A lot of our customers run this internally. Are there any things that we need to, is there anything about the corrective actions that need to be even more explicit because of that, the nature of that world?
Well, looking at the corrective actions that we've got right now, I'd say log rotate rules baked into Omnibus is the most effective solution for this problem for on-prem customers.
Mm-hmm.
Alerting ends up being maybe some documentation guidance on a given customer's, however they're doing alerting for basic node health.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we could dictate that.
Yeah, I don't think that. So, like, what I'm thinking is there some piece of information that we could have added to like the /status endpoint that doesn't?
Oh yeah.
Doesn't change the scope, and I think the answer to that is I'm seeing the answer is no. Unless
there might be a larger thought, like consider what information we could add to the status endpoint.
Yeah, because like I mean, in concept, that your check for parsing the JSON in /universe could be done via the status endpoint, but I don't know that that's what you want.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah, right. It's got a weird implication.
Yeah. Something to consider, though.
So, okay. Then I'm feeling good about this. Are there any other comments or questions? Hearing none.
Thank you to everyone for jumping on this so quickly. I was sleeping when this first happened too, so just expressing appreciation.
Not a problem.
Yes.
All right.
And as the new guy, I thank you for giving me tasks that I was capable of.
No worries. Thank you for everybody that responded, because that's always a huge deal. Is how fast can we get the right people in the room to get the problem solved? And for anybody that's worked in organizations where that's not actually a thing, it's delightful to work in a place where I can go into a Slack channel and be like, I need some help, like now, and people drop what they're doing and help. So Awesome. For those of you watching at home, you probably saw this on a blog post. So I'm going to go hopefully write that in the next few days. Anyway, thank you very much. And this concludes the postmortem.
Thanks, everyone.